The 6th year of marriage. I divorced with my family on my back and took my daughter back to my parents' home for the new year. At the dinner table, my daughter ate 2 chicken wings, but my mother smiled and said sarcastic, "If you continue eating like this, you will make my grandma poor." She turned her head and put all the 5 chicken wings left on the plate into her nephew's bowl, urging her to eat. If she doesn't eat it, she will be snatched away. My younger brother and sister-in-law ate quietly, pretending not to hear it. I pinched my palms tightly, turned around and took my daughter to KFC, and had enough food. 6 years later, I finally had the opportunity to go back to my parents' home for the new year. He took his 5-year-old daughter for a long time and was picked up by his younger brother from the high-speed rail station. As soon as I entered the door, I saw my mother's back working in the kitchen. My voice trembled and I shouted, "Mom." All the fatigue of days was sucked away at this moment. When my mother turned around and saw me, she couldn't help but look at me carefully, and the feeling of longing was surging. I strode forward and hugged my mother. "Mom, I miss you so much." Back then, married 1,000 miles away for love, but now 6 years have passed, I realize that love cannot overcome all difficulties. For 6 years, I can only come back once every year during the National Day holiday, and the meeting time is too short. So this time I plan to live at home for a while and be filial to my mother. I took the chopsticks from my mother's hand and wiped my tears. "Mom, I'll help you cook." Mom nodded with tears as well. The daughter watched from the side and smiled innocently. "Mom, Grandma, you are all adults, why are you still crying?" I was amused by her and touched her head, hoping that she would never understand. Just after stir-frying the dishes in the pot, my mother suddenly approached me and asked in a low voice, "Ming-Fei, what did you bring when you come back this time?" I was stunned for a moment before I realized what my mother said and explained quickly, "Mom, I'm back this time. The journey is long. If I get too much, it's inconvenient to go on the road. What's missing in our family? Tell me, I'll buy it after dinner." Mom turned around carefully and looked at the living room. The younger brother and sister-in-law were playing with their daughter and nephew. Then she continued, "I don't need anything, but when you come back so far, you should bring something to your sister-in-law and nephew." The movements on my hands stopped, and my smile was a little reluctant. I can naturally think of what my mother can think of. There was a set of skincare products I prepared for my sister-in-law and a red envelope for my nephew in the suitcase, but I had not had time to take it out just now. I continued to explain with a smile, "Mom, don't worry, I've prepared it long ago and will take it out during the meal." After I said this, my mother smiled, "Don't think too much. My mother is also reminding you because she is afraid that you will not think carefully." "It's okay, Mom, thank you for your thoughts on me." "Thank you sincerely. I am no longer a teenager, and I cannot question it with a grievance based on a superficial sentence." The starting point of my mother's speech is that it is not easy for a big family to get along well, and it requires the sincere dedication and acceptance of each party. These are taught to me by time and energy. As soon as he finished speaking, his sister-in-law Song Yan came to the kitchen and said, "Get the help." The mother happily pushed her out. "Oh, there are my sister and you here, so how can you do it? You work hard and you are tired of taking care of your children. Come out and have a good rest." With my mother's insistence on insisting, Yan had to leave the kitchen. I didn't care and looked at my mother jokingly, "Mom, I'm back so far away, why don't you feel sorry for me if I'm tired?" Mom was stunned and looked a little embarrassed. "Oh, aren't you sitting and resting on the road? Besides, I didn't ask you to do much, just do it. How tired can you be with your hands?" The words were not too much, but my mother's tone and disdainful expression when she spoke made me see it, and it was uncomfortable to be honest. Fortunately, the meal was finally finished and the whole family could finally serve the table together. I just didn't expect that this meal would become the beginning of all contradictions. There was a plate of Coke chicken wings on the dining table, which happened to be my daughter Yingying's favorite. I picked up the second one for my daughter, but I didn't realize the dissatisfaction of the people on the table. When my daughter was still catching her chicken wings, my mother's voice sounded, Yan, if you continue eating like this, Grandma will be poor by you." She frowned in a joke tone. I paused my daughter's hand and looked at my mother in surprise. "What does it mean? Is it a sin for Yingying to eat 2 chicken wings?" I put down the tissue and looked back with a smile. "Mom, what do you mean?" My mother smiled exaggeratedly. "Oh, what do I mean? I'll just joke with Yingying." My younger brother came out to smooth things over. Yes, it's just a joke, Yingying eats it quickly." As he said that, he picked up another chicken wing and put it into his daughter's bowl. But unexpectedly, the little nephew Yang suddenly shouted, "No! Dad, that's my mother's chicken wings." As he said that, the little nephew burst into tears. My daughter stared at the scene in surprise. He was very sensible and realized that the sudden conflict was related to him. He stopped eating and looked at me uneasy. I touched his head and signaled him not to be afraid. Just as I was about to comfort my nephew, a big hand suddenly came across my eyes. It was my mother who picked up the plate of the Coke chicken wings and put it in front of Yang Yang and coaxed him. "Don't cry or cry, Yang Yang is good. In fact, it's all Yang Yang and your mother, and they won't give it to others." My heart was cold again. My sister-in-law Song Yanyan coughed and looked at Yang Yang and scolded, "Why are you crying? You look so uneatable in front of outsiders." Yang Yang choked up aggrievedly, but the chicken wings at home were all my mother and I. "Shut up. Eat quickly." Yanyan scolded and explained to me with a smile, "Sister, don't mind, this child is spoiled by us and has no politeness at all." The light tone made me realize immediately that my sister-in-law didn't think there was anything wrong with this matter. On the first day I got home, I didn't want to have a bad time. I took a deep breath and squeezed out a smile. "Stop crying, Aunt has prepared a gift for you." As I said that, I left the dining table. Open the suitcase. I took out the skincare products prepared for my sister-in-law Yan Yan and the red envelopes prepared by my sister Yang Yang and my mother. My sister-in-law's eyes lit up and she smiled. "Sister, you are too polite. They are all family." I laughed, too. "It is because it is a family that you should not dislike the bad things you gave me. All of them are my wishes." The skincare product I gave was worth 3,000 yuan, the red envelope I gave Yang Yang was 1,000 yuan, and the one I gave to my mother was 2,000 yuan. I don't think it's shabby. When I was preparing the gift, I didn't think much about it, but just took the gift to my family as a kind of heart. But now I can't help but have more sustenance to this gift. I just hope that they don't be too picky about me and Ying for the sake of the gift. Sure enough, Song Yan and my mother who received the gift changed their faces. At the dinner table, no matter what dishes Ying was holding, my mother and Song Yan praised her for being independent and sensible, so that she could eat by herself. After a meal, I was still peaceful. When the rice dumplings were packed, my sister-in-law asked casually, "Sister, how long are you planning to stay here this time?" My hands were tidying up and didn't stop. "It's about 2 months. I have been back in the past few years and I want to spend more time with my mother this time." Upon hearing this, Song Yan frowned slightly. "Sister, do you want to live at home for 2 months?" I heard the displeasure and surprise in her words, and I also resisted looking back at me. "Mom, didn't you tell Yan Yan and the others?" Before I came back, I specifically told my mother that I would stay for a while when I came back this time. On the one hand, it is indeed to accompany her more. On the other hand, I have not told them that I have taken the local public institution exam and have passed the written test. 2 months later, it is probably the time when the interview results come out. I was very sure of this interview, but after all, the result was not yet released, so I didn't dare to say too much, so I didn't tell them about it. I thought I would take this time to spend more time with my family, but I didn't expect that my return was not so expected. The imagined reunion of relatives seems to be very different from reality. My mother smiled awkwardly. "I didn't know that you have lived for so long, and you never told me." I was stunned. I clearly remember what I told her, but now I don't know if she forgot or was afraid of causing trouble, so I directly denied this matter. When I returned to my body, my blood surging immediately. I took a deep breath and silently told myself, "Don't think about it. My daughter is still by my side. I can't let my daughter feel scared in the new environment." I pretended to be careless and smiled. "Oh, that might be because I forgot to say it. Mom, can I live in our house for 2 months?" I looked at my mother, but my mother glanced at Song Yan, said the water boiled, and turned around and went into the kitchen. I looked at my sister-in-law again and looked at me for 2 seconds. Song Yan chuckled and continued, "Sister, Chiami said, you can live in your own home as long as you want." But after saying that, she also turned around and entered the bedroom with the excuse, "Leave me alone in place." Ying was sent to the interest class, and her daughter was still watching cartoons in the living room. I stood alone in the living room, and the joy after I returned home seemed to be gradually being diluted. For the first time I realized that it seemed that this place was no longer my home. The atmosphere of lunch affected me and made me feel that I owe my daughter. In the evening, I took Ying out to eat KFC. She ate chicken wings, chicken legs, and hamburgers casually. Ying smiled and blossomed, "Mom, are there anything happy to celebrate today?" My heart was healed, and I smiled and replied to her, "With Ying by my mother, every day is worth celebrating. This is my heartfelt feeling. My daughter's existence is my motivation to do anything." When I came back this time, no matter what setbacks and obstacles I encountered, it would not stop me from taking my daughter back to take root here. Rebirth, Ying. After eating, I packed a new family bucket and planned to take it back to Yangyang. In a short period of time, I can't move out of my home. I need a safe place to stay and accompany Yingying's family. That home is the best choice. As long as I live at home, I have to deal with my mother, Song Yan, and Yang Yang. I honestly face my actual needs in heart, and know that whether I am holding the KFC in my hand or the high-priced fruit I bought by the fruit stall just now, I am trying to please. I used these to tell them not to drive us out first. But I didn't expect that as soon as I got out of the elevator, I heard the noise coming from my home. First, Song Yan's voice, "Your sister and her child are going to live here for 2 months. If there is an outsider at home, can I feel comfortable?" Next was Zhao Ningyuan's voice, 2 months passed quickly. Besides, she is my own sister, why is she an outsider? Whose relatives are so boundless that they come to other people's houses to live for 2 months? Look, she doesn't just want to live for 2 months. What's the meaning? Zhao Ningyuan asked. Her family is not here, why should she live longer? You see, she had called her brother-in-law and sent messages all day today. I guess she must have been back only after she couldn't live outside. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come back before, so why did she come back this year during the Chinese New Year? I've asked Yingying all, and she said that her parents had just had a fight. Don't guess. If. Zhao Ningyuan's voice was stuck, because the sound of me opening the door sounded, "Sister, you are back." Zhao Ningyuan's voice was a little panicked, and Song Yan stood up and went back to the room. Zhao Ningyuan smiled stiffly, "Sister, don't get me wrong," Yan Yan returned to the room when she was tired. He wasn't sure if I heard their conversation just now, and spoke carefully. I nodded, and did not expose it, and raised the whole family bucket in my hand. "Where is Yang Yang?" My voice attracted Yang Yang. These were all fried chicken brought by Sister Yingying, and she asked her to come and eat it. Hearing the shouts, Yang Yang ran out of my mother's room and happily took the fried chicken. My mother watched Yang Yang eat happily and smiled happily. I took the opportunity to ease the atmosphere. "I brought it to you specifically, is it good for me to treat you?" Yang Yang smiled happily and said that in the future, Sister Yingying would be her best friend. Yingying smiled and shook hands with Yang Yang when she heard this. The scene of harmony was interrupted by Song Yan's forced door opening. She walked into the sofa with a bag in her hand, tucking away the chicken legs in Yang Yang's mouth. "Who told you to eat these junk foods?" Yang Yang was stunned and looked at Song Yan with grievance and wanted to cry. Song Yan didn't care about his appearance, put on his coat with force, pulled him out. "Where are you going to take your children?" my mother asked after him. Song Yan replied angrily, "There are too many people in the family now. I am afraid that my sister and Yingying will not live in spacious places, so I went to my mother's house first." As she said that, she had already pulled Yang Yang to the door. My mother hurried forward and said that the room at home is enough, so don't bother the in-laws. But my sister-in-law's attitude is cold and firm. Seeing that he couldn't persuade him, Zhao Ningyuan shouted impatiently, "Mom, forget it, he insisted on leaving, just let him go." Song Yan's original pulling movement with my mother stopped. She looked up at Zhao Ningyuan in disbelief, her eyes flushed. "Zhao Ningyuan, don't regret it." After saying that, Song Yan turned around and closed the door. My mother was anxious and pushed Zhao Ningyuan, "What are you calling?" I didn't expect things to develop to this point, so I quickly advised him to chase him quickly. It was already evening, and it was so dangerous for them, mother and son, to be outside. Zhao Ningyuan looked irritable and finally went out after a while of pushing and shoving. After Zhao Ningyuan left, the living room returned to quiet again. I took Yingying to the room and clicked on the cartoon for her, and then came out to find my mother. My mother sat on the sofa and sighed constantly. I saw her anxious look and was worried. Just as she was about to persuade her, my mother sighed first and said, "Ning Fei, you said you are such a big person, why are you doing for a trip? If you don't come back, there will be nothing at home." I froze in shock. My fingers hanging beside me trembled constantly. I asked, "Mom, are you blaming me for coming back?" My heart was cut by a blunt knife, and my voice trembled, "Isn't this my home?" My mother didn't even raise her head and answered, "You've called out, how could this be your home? Your home is near the city." I tossed and turned that night. My daughter was already asleep in my arms. I gently patted her back, recalling every bit of the past 6 years in my mind. 6 years ago, I decided to marry my boyfriend who I had been in love for 2 years and get married to the nearest city. The wedding was held in a nearby city. The wedding day was the only time my mother came here to see me. That was what she said, "You choose the way you fly 1,000 miles. Don't tell me and your brother if you regret it in the future." I nodded with tears. After that, even though Ying was born, her mother never came to see me again. I understand that I miss my family in my heart. I feel that I am indebted to the 11th of the year, and I feel that I am not indebted to the time I come back or not. During the holidays, I will definitely transfer some red envelopes to my parents to buy gifts. In the near future, the specialties are mature every September, and I will also send them to relatives who are close thousands of miles away. I just hope that they can be nicer to my mom when I'm away. After my nephew Yang Yang was born, I brought gifts to Yang Yang and my sister-in-law every time I celebrated the holiday. Therefore, although we have not met much in the past few years, we often contact each other online, and we have no conflicts. But now I have only been back for 2 days, and I have realized that the former Helu was just an illusion created by distance and gifts. The truth is that our previous family affection has long been weak and vulnerable. I took deep breaths and kept reflecting to find out what exactly is this change. When I woke up the next day, I happened to bump into my younger brother who was going to work. I called him and asked, "How did you communicate with Yan Yan yesterday? Are Yan Yan still angry?" Zhao Ningyuan waved his hand and said, "Sister, don't worry about this." While saying that, he did not stop and left directly. In the next few days, Zhao Ningyuan went out early and came back late. Even though he finally ran into me, he just said hello and left hastily. I asked Song Yan about her situation several times, but she was interrupted by her laughter. Leaving the coldness was another silent entanglement and complaint. I understand. Compared to Zhao Ningyuan's calmness, my mother's complaints appeared in high profile in every day, saying that the food is getting more and more expensive and it is too unaffordable, saying that other people's daughter is so sensible that she buys gold and jade bracelets for her mother, saying that when Song Yan was at home, Zhao Ningyuan was so happy. I pretended to turn a blind eye and speeded up the pace of finding a house. Until today, when the door was opened, I happened to see my mother push Ying away hard. Ying was pushed to the ground and cried out with a wow. I was also stunned at the door for a moment, ran over and picked up Ying, and then looked at my mother in shock. I thought she would take her anger on my mother and daughter because of Song Yan's departure, but I didn't expect that she would treat a child, her own granddaughter, so cruelly. "Mom, what are you doing?" I was a little out of control and shouted. But my mother just looked at us, mother and daughter squatting on the ground with disgust, then stood up from the sofa and walked towards her room. I whispered to Ying, my heart hurt like a knife. The Chinese New Year will be held in 2 days. I thought I would like to look forward to the house today, buy things when I come back, and go to Song Yan's parents' house with Zhao Ningyuan to say good things and ask her to come back with the child. The Chinese New Year is coming soon, so I can't make my whole family unhappy because of my return. I also thought about it and lived at home until the 4th day of the Lunar New Year. After the reunion together, I moved out with Ying. After the New Year, I went to work and sent Ying to kindergarten, so our lives would be on track. But I didn't expect that my mother couldn't even tolerate me these days. Zhao Ningyuan came back and was startled when he saw me. "Sister, why don't you turn on the light?" I asked him with a reluctant smile, "Have you communicated with Song Yan these 2 days?" Zhao Ningyuan's facial features were wrinkled. I sat up and patted him with a smile. "I will go and pick up Yan Yan with you tomorrow. It's the new year, how can my family not be reunited?" Zhao Ningyuan shook his head with difficulty. "Forget it, it's useless." "I don't understand." She swallowed several times, and seemed to have made a great decision. "Sister, I won't hide it from you. Yan Yan said that there are too many people and it is inconvenient to live. It just so happened that she lived in her parents' house for a while, so it would be more comfortable to live with Ying." I took a deep breath. It's the Chinese New Year, which means that he won't come back if he knows I'm still living. I smiled. "I found a house. We can move out after the New Year together." Zhao Ningyuan was stunned, surprise flashed in his eyes, and finally his complicated eyes turned into a treacherous name, "Sister." I raised my hand to block his mouth and smiled. "No need to say, Ningyuan, everyone has grown up and each has their own difficulties. I understand you." The next morning, I went out early to buy gifts. After Zhao Ningyuan and my mother got up, they saw the gift boxes piled in the living room and looked at each other. My mother walked up to me and pulled my hand. "Go and talk to Yan Yan." I nodded and she patted my hand. "Ning Fei, don't blame Mom." A sourness ran around in my body. I forced myself to push her hand away and greet Ningyuan. The car was very quiet. Zhao Ningyuan drove and I looked at the road ahead quietly. When I was passing by elementary school, there was a small stall next to me that was very lively, and I couldn't help but take a look at it. Zhao Ningyuan said, "Sister, this is the one we loved to eat when we were a child. Do you still remember it?" I looked over and looked at the shining sign, and my mind flashed back when I was a child. My family's financial conditions were not good, and Zhao Ningyuan and I had limited pocket money. After school, other students bought all kinds of skewers around the stall next door, and we had to save for a long time to entertain ourselves in a luxurious banquet. Once, do you remember? Sister, you have little money. We have to worry about choosing the best one for a long time. Yes, I couldn't help laughing. I remember one time you picked up $10 on the way to school. We were happy and nervous, afraid that someone would come and ask for it, and we couldn't sleep well for a week. I also remembered that $10 was a huge sum of money for us in elementary school at that time. The one at the entrance of the school costs 1 cent and 1 string of string, 3 cents and 1 bowl of string of string. How did we deal with this money later? Zhao Ningyuan was very excited. I lowered my head and smiled at the corner of my mouth. I gave you 8.5 yuan to buy toy cars that many boys had at that time. I left 2 yuan to buy snacks. I left 2 pieces. Zhao Ningyuan's smile froze on his face. When I was a child, my parents were very busy. Although I was only 2 years older than Zhao Ningyuan, I basically took care of him. I feel sorry for him. When I get good things since I was a child, I will give him more. When he entered college, I was already a junior and our dad had left. I saved a little money by working part-time, and after he entered school, I sent him a computer and a pair of Nike sneakers. These were very popular in the school at that time. He didn't want me to spend money and asked me to return it. I firmly refused to return it. He smiled and told him, "We would rather have what others have than that. This is my own regret. I don't want him to have it." "But you didn't buy it for yourself," he cried. I patted his head and said, "Sister, yes, I have no interest in these, just have them." Every winter and summer vacation during college, I would take Zhao Ning far away to buy clothes, hoping to make him dress decently and to compensate me for the loss of buying clothes without any extra money. With this support, Ningyuan finally graduated from work. My work development is pretty good, and my mother is still in good health. Seeing Ningyuan and I get married and become parents, our family's life is getting better and better. Plain but happy, this is what I have always been proud of. At that time, I probably didn't expect that one day I wouldn't even be eligible to stay at home for a few days. Zhao Ningyuan's car sound interrupted my thoughts, and I was puzzled. Why did you stop? Zhao Ningyuan's eyes flushed. Let's not go to Yanyan's house for now, you and Yingying live well. In just a moment, I understood what he meant. The memory gave birth to a hint of guilt, which motivated his conscience. He felt guilty towards me and couldn't bear to drive me out of the house. But I know that this emotion is only temporary. At this moment, family love and blood make him willing to help me. As long as I really continue to live, the conflict between them and their husbands will deepen, and he will only hate me. Before we could make a fuss, I don't want to continue. I held down his hand on the steering wheel and smiled. Don't turn around, go and pick up Yanyan and Yang Yang, I've found a place to stay. It was the door opened by Song Yan's mother. When Yingying met, Zhao Ningyuan would smile. Song Yan stayed in the room and couldn't come out. Song Yan's mother sat opposite us with a dignified smile. Ningyuan, Yanyan hasn't been with me and his father for a long time. Let him and Yang Yang spend our time with us this year. We have always kept his room here. He looked at me, and your sister is back, and your family is also reunited. I smiled and handed the peeled banana to him. I'm not at home all year round. I should have come early when I come back this time. You and my uncle are here now, so it's really not. Song Yan's mother took the banana and a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. She probably didn't expect me to be so kind. She curled her lips. I heard from Ning Fei, how many months do you have to live here this time? Why didn't your husband come together? He is willing to leave you and your baby daughter for so long? The exploratory look, a sentence, pointed the key point of the matter, and she was helping her daughter find the answer. I cheered up and said, you are an elder. If you have anything, I will tell you. I have divorced Yingying's father. As soon as this said, Song Yan's mother did not react much. Instead, Zhao Ningyuan's expression changed drastically and she sat up from the sofa. Divorce? Why divorce? Sister, has she bullied you? The care in her eyes is not fake. I pulled him to sit down. After hearing this, Song Yan, who had never come out, also came out of the room and sat next to his mother. It's divorced. Mom really let you guess it right, they're really divorced. Even if he gets divorced, sister, you can't come to disturb our lives. We are also a family of 3. We are very tired from work. After returning home, I want to have a comfortable environment. Now when I get home, there are 2 outsiders at home. How can we live comfortably? Yan Yan and Song Yan's mother stopped. Song Yan frowned, stingy. Oh, since you've said this, let's make it clear. Do you want to live in my house all the time? Having said that, I almost understood that Song Yan and Zhao Ningyuan had no emotional record, and this quarrel was just because Yingyin and I lived in the house. You comfort Song Yan. Your mother asks him not to blame Song Yan. You smiled and looked at Song Yan. Yan Yan, don't worry, I have been looking at the house these days. I just stayed at home for a few days, and I will move out soon. Song Yan looked at me suspiciously. Sister, you didn't mean to say that. You lied to me first and then dragged me away. I smiled and promised not to do so, and I would never disturb their family's normal life. In order to make him believe me, he turned on the chat history with the agent on his mobile phone, and he nodded with confidence. Sister, you said it earlier. I could still accept it for a few days, and I was not that stingy. It was only when my mother said you would have to live for a few months before I left angry. Song Yan promised to take Yang Yang home for the new year tomorrow. I breathed a sigh of relief in my heart. The conflict that caused me was finally about to calm down. I took a deep breath and knew that after Zhao Ningyuan and us returned home, there would be even greater quarrels waiting for me. After returning home, Zhao Ningyuan asked me about the divorce, and naturally my mother knew about it. I originally wanted to wait until the job was confirmed before telling him about this, otherwise she would definitely cry and make a fuss with her personality, but now I have to confess in advance. Sure enough, when I saw my divorce certificate, my mother collapsed on the ground and lowered her head and cried. It was a sin. What are you so unthinkable? You have to divorce. After enduring the grievances for several days, at this moment, I was stubborn and did not let tears fall. She was cheating on her domestic violence, and I narrated it calmly. My mother was stunned for a few seconds after hearing this, and then she cried again, you can't divorce. She is boring outside and will go home. Why are you anxious? I looked at him in shock, my voice choked, Mom, do you want to blame me too? As a woman, I thought she could not accept my divorce for the time being, but I didn't expect that when she knew I was bullied like this, she still didn't stand on my side. My mother staggered my sight and cried even louder. The Chinese New Year is coming soon. When you come back from divorce, where will I put my old face? She suddenly pointed to the roof and asked me, are you worthy of your dead father? If you let her be there, you will be devastated. My heart was beaten by a blunt weapon, and my eyes were endless. I didn't understand how I got divorced, and how could it be embarrassing to my dead father. Suddenly my mother cried and looked at me with wide eyes. No wonder you said you would stay at home for a few months. Are you planning to stay at home? My head felt swelling, and when I heard anything again, I didn't seem to feel pain. I heard my ordinary voice, Mom, are you going to force me to move out tonight? What does it mean to force you to divorce? It is your own decision, and you should bear the consequences. I nodded with a bitter smile, my mother, I didn't want to drag anyone down. I looked at her with a miserable smile. I just thought my mother would help me when I was in the most difficult time. I just thought this place was still my home. I slowly let go of my hand holding him and slowly stood up from the pile. Sister, don't be angry, Zhao Ningyuan comes to pull me. I gently broke away from her. Don't you know? When I went to Yan Yan's house today, I didn't blame her at all, but I envied her. Zhao Ningyuan was stunned. I envied her. There was a mother who was willing to accept her and provide her with a guarantee for her. I looked at my mother and burst into tears. I asked her softly, but why didn't I have such a mother? My mother's slut was turned on and pushed me hard. Don't talk about my mother, you can go to anyone you want to be your mother, and you can leave my house quickly. I didn't pay attention for a moment, and my head hit the coffee table, making my heart hurt. I stood up and turned back to the room, picked up the scared Ying baby, and left with my mother. I couldn't hear what Zhao Ningyuan advised me when he stopped me, and I couldn't hear what my mother was crying and making a fuss behind me. All I know is that I have to leave tonight. I stopped the car on the side of the road, threw Zhao Ningyuan away, put Ying in, and then said to Zhao Ningyuan, please help me collect my luggage and send it to me, I will send it to your sister. She held the car door and I looked at him and smiled. Ningyuan, I didn't understand before, why did the siblings become relatives after getting married? Now I understand. After saying that, I forced myself to close the car door. It was not until I checked in at the hotel and coaxed Yinin to sleep for a long time that I finally moved to the bathroom slowly. The woman in the mirror had fluffy, messy, and embarrassed hair. I looked at it and burst into tears. Fortunately, the nights when I was abused by domestic violence were better, and it seemed that the situation was getting better. The next day was New Year's Eve afternoon, and Zhao Ningyuan called, Sister, my mother said something angry last night. He was just a sarcastic word. He advised me to come back for the new year. My mother also wanted you to come back, but she just couldn't help but tell you, let's be a child to understand him, I have other worries. He also hurriedly added, and Yan Yan also said, let me come back for the new year, otherwise you will be divorced and it will be so sad that you will be with your children outside alone. I still refuse. Seeing that my attitude was firm, Zhao Ningyuan sighed several times and hung up the phone. Are you sad? Yes, but it seems to be within the acceptance range. Before getting married, I thought the man I chose would be my future support, but reality gave me a slap. After finally ending this marriage completely, I was stripped and ran away. I thought I could lick my wounds. The port with my blood here is the last harbor in my heart. But to this day, I have seen clearly that the ships leaving the port have a port that temporarily docked and a permanent home. Now I just want to take Ying and live our own life. I left the cave with the certificate of a successful divorce. I didn't get much money, and my savings totaled only 30,000 yuan. I originally wanted to rent a house after passing the interview successfully, and my mother could help me take Ying, and I would take Ying back tonight. Take your time like this and your life will always get better and better. But now I am worried that my mother will help you take Ying. There are lights outside the window. It's not that I don't know that I will live an easier life if I keep Ying by his father's side. But she is my daughter, and I will protect her for one day of my life. If I have a little ability, I will not leave her in danger. In the next few days, Zhao Ningyuan called me several more times, but I didn't answer, and he gave up and sent me a message, sister, I know you are still angry with mom. After a while, you will calm down, let's talk. I have a crush on mobile phones. I'm no longer angry, I'm just disappointed. I often recall the scene when I went to pick up Song Yan with him. To be honest, I really don't blame Song Yan. Her arrogance and willfulness are the confidence given to her parents' family. I envy her for having a pair of parents who always support her, but I don't. I also envy Zhao Ningyuan. He has a mother who always cares about him, but I don't. After the spring festival, I moved from the hotel to the rented house and prepared for the interview carefully. It was not until the day the results came out that I finally breathed a sigh of relief when I saw my name on the public list. If I have a stable job, I will have the confidence to support my life with Ying. I transferred my household registration to Ying and signed up for kindergarten. But when Ying was playing downstairs, I consciously understood the situation of the mothers. Finally, I agreed with a full-time mother that she would take Ying with her child after school, and I would go to her house to pick her up after get off work. Pay $1,000 a month. I know I give her very little money, and I am sorry for the trouble that has been brought to her. Apart from living expenses and rent, my salary is not much left in a month. But the days of peace of mind and hope finally have a new beginning. Life was just like this, but suddenly one day, I received a call from Zhao Ningyuan, our mother and Yang Yang have a car accident. Sister, come quickly. I asked for leave in a panic and rushed to the hospital, and saw Zhao Ningyuan and Song Yan both waiting anxiously outside the door of the emergency room. Song Yan had already cried into tears. What can our mother do to make a child? She can hurt the child when she is. Her head is covered in blood. If something goes wrong, I will not live anymore. Okay, don't panic first, Zhao Ningyuan comforted her, but his own voice trembled. I only realized that my mother was riding a tram and taking Yang Yang out for fun and was hit by a car. Until now, both parties involved in the accident are rescued. I couldn't stand against the wall and took deep breaths, thinking in my mind. Finally, the door of the rescue room opened and the doctor told us that neither Yang Yang nor my mother were in danger of life. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Yang just needs to recover the wound, but my mother injured her leg. She is older and will recover for a longer time, and there may be sequelae. When Yang Yang and my mother were transferred to the general ward, I went in to see her, and her eyes were full of pain. After staying in the yard for a few days, Yang Yang was taken to her grandmother's house and was taken care of by Song Yan's mother. Song Yan has to hurry back to see her son after get off work every day and has no time to come to the hospital. Zhao Ningyuan was also busy with work and asked me if I could stay in the hospital for care at night. I asked back, what should I do if Ying? He was stunned and speechless. Then I'll hire a nurse, he scratched his head helplessly, but what to do with 3 meals? Sister, can you cook for our mother? To be honest, I can do it, it's just a little harder to compress the time to rest and spend with Ying. But I can't say the sentence yes. I can't forget the scene of myself being hurt by my relatives in the most difficult moment. I replied to him, you and Song Yan are responsible for breakfast and lunch. I will order takeout for our mother for dinner. Zhao Ningyuan was stunned when he heard this. After a while, he asked me in disbelief, "Sister, that's your real mother, are you so cruel?" I looked at him lightly. When our mother treats me as a child, I will treat her as a mother. In my most difficult moment, who has helped me? I ignored his disappointed gaze and added, "The efforts in family affection are mutual. I have never received love from our mother, so I can't give love." "Then legally speaking, shouldn't you be filial with me?" she said in a stern tone, as if she was very angry. I smiled. The law is also ethical. We are both children at home, but when you get married, our mother takes out her savings, buys a house, a car, and pays the dowry. When I get married, our mother doesn't even pay a dowry, let alone other things. I didn't think about these things, and I understand that it's not easy for our mother to raise us. In the years since I got married, I will buy things and send red envelopes to our mother every holiday. Do you know these? But I don't even have the right to live at home for a few months and a few days. Do you still think I should share the same support obligation as you? He listened quietly, his face turned pale. I swallowed and said at once, "Do you know why our mother is like this? Because she believes from the bottom of her heart that her daughter is unreliable and that only her son can support herself. So from childhood to adulthood, she has been sacrificing my interests to please you. Do you really don't know about these things as the beneficiary? Since that's the case, now is the time for our mother to verify her life beliefs." Zhao Ningyuan was stunned and wanted to refute, but he didn't know what to say. My mom woke up as we quarreled. I looked back at her with red eyes and said coldly, "Don't worry, she is still my mother. I will fulfill my obligation to support her, so I will order takeaway to the hospital every night, and will occasionally see her after she is discharged. But don't think about it if it's redundant." After saying that, I turned around and left, regardless of the sound of my mother calling my name behind me. My mother's health is getting better, but she still needs to rest in bed most of the time. I recall that Zhao Ningyuan was in debt, and the nanny in the house had to be responsible for the housework at home and didn't have so much time to take care of her carefully. Zhao Ningyuan and Song Yan have to go to work, after get off work. Song Yan often goes back to her parents' home to see Yang Yang. Live at my parents' home. Most of the time my mom lies alone in the bed. On the sofa. I go to see her every Saturday after get off work. She looked at her a little dodged, like a child who did something wrong when she was a child. This was a few chats. I offered to leave. She called me behind her. "We rented a house and now we live well, so you don't have to worry. Are you taking care of your children full-time now? What should you do if you don't have a source of income? How much did you pay for the divorce? I am now admitted to the career and have a job income, so you don't have to worry." His voice was cold, and then another surprise appeared in his eyes. "Then you will be a public meal in the future." I didn't answer, and seeing that he had nothing to ask, I stepped up again. But today he seemed to have endless things to say. "Don't blame your mother, she had no choice at that time. If you and Yingying were allowed to live in Ningyuan, Ningyuan's life would not be peaceful. You don't know Song Yan's personality." I interrupted him, "Don't refuse to others when you encounter a problem. Song Yan is not wrong, nor are you wrong. It's just that people have to bear this choice. This is what you said." Her whole face was eager to defend herself, but I didn't want to listen anymore. When I was a child, I used all my sensibility to excuse him for his partiality and indifference. It's not that he doesn't love me, I'm just too busy and don't have time to take care of me carefully. It's not that he doesn't love me, it's just that he is a mother for the first time, and I don't know how to treat me well. But when I became a mother, I realized that it was not like that. Normal maternal love, I can't help but want to give everything to myself when I face Yingying's little face. He will do his best to protect her and support her. It was because she felt infinite confidence and strength when she thought of her. But my mother doesn't have these. But he wanted to get a lot of reward from me. Since I was born, he regarded me as a business that was destined to lose money. Then I simply fulfilled myself, closed the door, left, and isolated all his sighs. Zhao Ningyuan always calls me and asks if I can live home. Our mother misses you very much. Come back more often to accompany her. Besides, can you rest assured that the nanny takes care of our mother? He made temptations and demands in a joking tone. I asked back, will it be inconvenient for Yan Yan and Yang Yang to live when I go back? No, they basically live with my mother-in-law now. So let me go back, or is it because it is profitable for me? My mother was sick and could not be an old mother for Zhao Ningyuan's family. She became a burden to them, so they thought of me. I remained silent. Song Yan's business also appeared on the phone. Sister, you don't know what the use of raising a daughter is. When you are sick, you can't see anyone. I've explained it to you. Come back quickly, don't let our mother be sad with illness. I smiled faintly, is it? Then you are filial, and you should take care of it more for your hard work. After saying that, he hung up the phone directly. As usual, I sent him some fruits and daily necessities to express delivery every week, but I didn't say anything extra. When he went home to see him again, he had bed sores on his body. I felt aching in my heart. I went into the bathroom in an instant, washed the towel, and helped him wipe his body. He started to resist several times, but finally accepted the scrub silently. He sighed halfway through, it is still useful to raise a daughter. I can't count on that boy Zhao Yuan at all, and Song Yan is even more ungrateful. I was so kind to her before, but I was sick. Mom. I stopped my actions. Many relationships become worse because of their speech. I took a deep breath and continued to wipe his body. You have hurt one child, so don't hurt another, otherwise you will really be left alone. I finished speaking in the coldest tone, ignoring the guilt and sorrow in his eyes. After leaving Zhao Yuan's house, I went directly to the kindergarten to pick up Yingying. Yingying lined up and walked out of the classroom. When she saw me again, she immediately waved to me and smiled brightly, Mom, you are the first row of the station today to pick me up. He kissed me hard in the face with excitement. I think I will be very happy with her for the rest of my life, and everything else is irrelevant. The bigger the Xianwen Wan is. As an unexquisite salted fish pendant. I